Mark's watching MTC Media, and we're going to break down where Georgetown, the couple of plays where Georgetown essentially lost the game against Providence, and we're going to start with the fact that Devin Carter hits a shot that he can hit, but I can understand why Georgetown didn't have a hand up or that they weren't closer, unless Coach Cooley had told them in the scout that in that situation, I want you to ball pressure it. And what I think probably what they were doing was hedging their bets. He's out there, he's in a non-threatening position. Why compromise the defense? Why get us in rotation? Why risk him getting 2 feet in the paint? All those things get into his spot because Devin Carter can do those things. We all know he is a shot creator. So that I am not going to ding Ed Cooley on. What I will say is the crucial series of plays or couple plays there was kind of a reflection of what happened in the Xavier game. When Georgetown was in a similar situation against Xavier, Ed Cooley went 1-4 flat. And Xavier doubled the ball out of Jaden Epps' hands. And if you guys watch my wrap up then, I stressed Xavier didn't do anything that was out of the ordinary that really hurt Georgetown. Because if you watch the play, Epps makes the right play, which is get the ball out of his hands from the doubler. Jay Heath got all the way to the front of the rim. He just missed. Doesn't make the play wrong. When if you get doubled in a situation like that and you make the right play and it gets to the front of the rim and you missed it, then from a coaching perspective, you've done all you can because you've prepared them for that moment, even for a play that obviously you didn't anticipate to happen, and your player still executed it to get it to the front of the rim. And so this time around, go to the Providence game, they start with the ball out of Epps' hands purposely, and they go for a stagger to stagger it back into his hands. So you get him on the move. You'll see if Providence is going to switch, and if Providence is switching to stagger, then whether Epps is in a situation where he has a mismatch and can take advantage of the switch. But what ended up happening is, if you look at the first screen of the stagger with Masood, either Epps doesn't rub close enough or Masood doesn't really get to the right spot, because they didn't even have to chase Epps on the hip. They just follow Epps through. And then when you have a guy who's really not a primary ball handler, and Jay Heath, he habit passed it because the play calls for you to pass it even though that guy wasn't open. Whereas if you have a primary ball handler and he sees that guy jumping that route, you probably hold on to it a little bit more, or you see if you can get a DHO out of it, or you try to reset it. There are various things that you could do in that situation. Now, you look at the Davidsons of the world, and even so much the Creightons of the world on that stagger, how Providence was playing it. There is an opportunity there to shoot backdoor for Epps. There's an opportunity for him to basically counter off of them playing the play. And so it ends up being a habit turnover, and he needs to sprint to get back in front of the ball. Because how college basketball calls the flagrant fouls, running beside or, heaven forbid, being slightly behind, you always put in the play that they're going to say that you're not playing the ball. In the 80s, for whatever this is worth, we were taught sprint ahead the ball, act like you're trying to strip it. So you don't want the ball to get up in the air. You still want it to be down by his hip, either by dribble or him trying to bring it up, and you come across both arms. where the ball comes in. So at the very least, if it's going to be a foul, it's not going to be a 3-point play. Things was legislated and refereed different then. So I'm not saying that's what Jay Heath should have done. Only thing I'm saying is he needed to try to find a way to sprint ahead of the ball, and he didn't do that. And that was the beginning of the end of Georgetown for that game, and another late game scenario where they couldn't finish. But this thing all came down to Devin Carter hitting a three, just being a good player, hitting a three, being a talented guy. Cooley knows who he recruited, and there was a reason why Cooley recruited that guy. Guy can flat out play. But it was Georgetown's reaction to it. And that's not the ding the play call. That's not the ding the play call that he decided this time to try to get Epps the ball in motion. There's nothing wrong with that. That people who second guess that's Monday morning quarterbacking. Those are people who've never coached. It's Monday morning quarterbacking. But you have to have a primary ball handler and a good decision maker to understand that what to do if that's not there. The guys, Kim English and his staff, they're coaching too. They watch film too. So what is it? Is he comes all the way across? Does he go back door? Does he come all the way across? And then you can have some screen to screener action, which, like I said, you see at Davidson, sometimes at Creighton, they'll screen the screener off of that. The guy will go and he'll shoot back door, or he'll shoot in between the two stagger, and they'll curl back through, and they'll screen the screener, and maybe that guy fades, maybe he curls. There are different actions based on how the defense plays you in those things. But again, I don't know if those actions were in play for Georgetown. Certainly when I've been in their practices, I haven't seen them do those things, those counters off of it. So you're not going to do something that you didn't practice. That's a misnomer. It's not a movie where, the coach draws up this play the players have never run, and, you get a miracle shot out of it. That's Hollywood. Now, you might draw up a different action off an existing action. That happens. That action that you always run or you always practice, and you kind of just make a little change or a tweak to that action. But you just don't draw up a new concept. So that's in that little window. That's where Georgetown lost this. Was execution. The same reason they lost to Xavier down the end. Same reason they lost to Seton Hall down at the end. And it's just something that Georgetown that's bedeviling them, because there's 4 games 5 games that you can put in this thing. As was pointed out to me, Georgetown stopped scoring at the end and lost to Holy Cross. Then, of course, we have the TCU. The guy was out of bounds and made a 3, and you couldn't reverse that call. Then you have Seton Hall, you have Xavier, and you have Providence. And 2 of the 3 of the Big East losses down at the end were road. Gosh, those would have been great road wins at Xavier and Providence. Great road wins that you just didn't execute. And then, of course, TCU, Seton Hall, and Holy Cross was at home. So it depends on how you want to look at this. You can say that this team went into an adverse situation, a bonkers atmosphere, and one of the hardest places to play in the Big East, and could have walked away with a win. Or you can look at it as, hey man, this team just doesn't have something to be able to close. If you're a glass half full guy, you say, hey man, they are competing their rear ends off. And if you're a glass half empty guy, you say, look, with this roster, they cannot close games. They can't close games in their conference. And, at this point, your roster is what it is. And you can't, there's really not much you can do about it. So depends on how you look at it. But that sums up the little sliver of the window where Georgetown lost it. It's Marcus Washington with MTC Media.